Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast. Caleb Hatch with you and Justin Kinney joining us from hopefully the future street race sites for IndyCar in Pensacola Beach, Florida. How is vacation going?
You know, it's been a great week. You know, we're always usually have a day or two, or it's too cold or too chilly or too rainy to do beach stuff, and we haven't had that this week. And this is our last day here as we record on Friday afternoon, and it's usually one of the crappy days is when we go axe throwing. We haven't had one, so here we are Friday. The boys are inside throwing axes, hopefully at targets, maybe at people. I don't know. Told them to keep themselves entertained for like 45 minutes or so we can talk IndyCar. So, but yeah. As I do every year down here, just sending out feelers and seeing what we can do. Me and Tony Koppman, trade track design ideas and see what we can come up with down here in the Panhandle. I mean, yeah, St. Pete has their thing, but nothing in the Panhandle. And since no longer are we at NOLA, right, this area of the country needs a race. But, oh, yeah, we had one last week at Barber.
Yes, and before we get to Barber, you're in the same area that Pato Award was in just a few days ago, flying with the Blue Angels.
I saw that, and I was very jealous. So the Blue Angels usually practice 1 or 2 times a week when we're here. They're based at Naval Air Station Pensacola, which is right across the bay from us. We can watch them practice, which is pretty cool. And actually, they came through on Sunday evening. They were gone for an air show over the weekend, and every time they return to Pensacola, they buzz Pensacola Beach, which we were able to see that. That was pretty cool. And then I see that, earlier this week, Pato is in town, and he gets a ride along with the Blue Angels. So something else he gets to do that I have yet to do is get a ride along with the Blue Angels. So it was cool to see Pato was in town and enjoying the sights and sounds of Pensacola as we do every single year on spring break.
That was probably the highlight of his week. Barber race, probably not the highlight of his week as he struggled. But a guy who did not struggle, as we'll dive into Barber, the Children's of Alabama Indy Grand Prix, as it was officially titled. Alex Palou puts on a clinic, wins the pole, wins the race, holds off multiple challengers, including Graham Rahal and Christian Lundgaard, and gets his second win of the season in IndyCar. And all in all, seemed like a good weekend. Was it the greatest race? No. But I think this will dive into I feel like we have actually a lot of takeaways from this race for a race that didn't feel like it had a whole lot going on until about the last 20 laps or so.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of guys that did well that maybe don't traditionally, and vice versa. So I think there was a lot to take out of Barber. What's your number one?
Yes.
We'll let you kick it off.
So my number one takeaway is, and I think we've talked about this before, but it is clear to me that Alex Palou and the 10 team are just in the entire field's heads. Like what we saw this weekend, on the broadcast, they were like, oh, wow, he's using up, the red tires, and how's that going to work for Sunday? Well, it didn't matter. Also, he can just go about his day. Their pit stops are almost always flawless, and wait for other people to screw up. That's basically what IndyCar has come to in 2026, is Alex Palou is going to say, hey, you can beat me straight up, but you can't make any mistakes. And I feel like Palou has just gotten in the heads of drivers. I think we'll talk about some guys who had good days, and we're not going to get too much into the championship discussion, but outside, I think maybe like one other driver, it just feels like guys have been pressing for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, it just continues on that Palou is able to do this. And it's because not just him, but his team doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, is the only thing that's holding us back from a repeat of last year through the first 4 races of the season is the issue at Phoenix, where Palou finished 24th. Other than that, it's first, second, first. It's the same old, right? Obviously, coming out with the amount of wins that he did last year right off the jump, but the dominance is still there, and that's why we appreciated and put the importance on having an oval early in the season prior to Indy, because the unpredictability of that oval throws the points championship into flux potentially based on what Alex Palou can do there. And that's exactly what we saw at Phoenix. And I mentioned to you, and we've talked about it before, about the no in-car cameras for Palou and our belief that that's just another mind screwery, if we avoid the other word. Is it's just something else for drivers and even team owners to think about and say, well, he's got to be hiding something, right? It's just that playing with the minds of everybody else. Does Alex Palou really have something to hide? Probably not. But the fact that he doesn't let in-car cameras in, it's on the mind of everybody else. And everybody can deny it, but Alex Palou is in the head of every single other driver and team owner in this entire series, because when you break it down, none of them can completely explain why Alex Palou is dominating the way he is. And that's probably the most frustrating thing. Everybody, we've heard of that, this year we're going to take the fight to Palou. We've figured out this, that, and the other. And it's same old right now through 4 races.
I think the other thing, the one thing we can take away that we know is Palou is so much better at managing tires than everyone else in the field. Like, it's not even close. And everyone's pointed to his Super Formula experience as being the key to unlock that. But what he's been able to do on primaries when other guys are on reds, or on reds when other guys are on primaries, it's just, he's at a whole other level. And it's amazing to see. And quite frankly, at this point, he's not just in the head of every other driver and other team, but in his own team too. I think he's in Scott Dixon's head as well. Let's not get ourselves on that one.
No, it's a great point. I think, he is out Scott Dixoning Scott Dixon, if that makes sense, in terms of just being so good, so many places, on so many different tire compounds and so many different strategies, and just being flawless. I mean, the further we get away from Mid-Ohio last year, the less we can really reference it as, anything can happen with Alex Palou. The one time he screwed up has been brought up multiple times because, quite frankly, it's the only hope that the field and the fans have of something else happening at the front of the grid. And so that's why the broadcast continues to gravitate towards that one instance, because, hey, anything can happen. But in the end, Alex Palou is the best driver in this series. It's not even close. He's confounding everybody because nobody truly can answer why Alex Palou is so dominant. And I think that's what the most frustrating thing is in the paddock, is we don't know how he does it, so we cannot try to replicate it.
What's your first takeaway?
Well, the praise goes to Alex Palou for sure, but I thought Christian Lundgaard had the best car all weekend.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy that was making moves on Sunday. Without Christian Lundgaard, this is even more of a snoozer than it actually was. But he brings it home second. I felt he had the best car when you talk about pace, when you talk about in traffic, when you talk about being able to pass cars. Alex Palou just didn't have to pass cars because he led 79 of the 90 laps, right? But I thought Christian Lundgaard was absolutely phenomenal. Do we look at it? Is it too soon to talk about a 1A, 1B situation at McLaren? Do you feel like that is a worthy conversation to have at this point? Point standings don't mean much now, but Christian Lundgaard is firmly ahead of Pato O'Ward right now when it comes to the championship and point standings. So do you feel, Caleb, do we need to talk about McLaren as being 1A, 1B? Or do you feel like we haven't seen enough yet? Because I felt like you and I were both in agreement. Christian Lundgaard could be that dude this year to take maybe the biggest jump in terms of championship contender. And I think through 4 races we've seen it.
Yeah, no, I think we already saw it last year with what he did in year 1 at McLaren. I mean, you got to remember, he went from Honda to Chevy, which is a big change for a driver. We're seeing Will Power struggle a lot going from Chevy to Honda. And just, again, he's talked about the braking's different, how the engines work especially on I think street courses, it's different. I think with Christian Lundgaard, yes, I think absolutely the 1A, 1B conversation within McLaren, I think that was decided last season. I think we're just seeing the continuation of that play out here in 2026. And I understand that everyone's going to say, well, Lundgaard is terrible on ovals. I think that's maybe an overstated thing at this point. I mean, I get that he's not, won on an oval and he's not competing for wins and poles, but you have to look in the improvement of the results. I mean, to me, this is a guy who's starting to get results. In his last year with Rahal, he's 13th in the Indy 500 with Rahal, mind you, and in 24. And then last year with McLaren, his first year, he was 7th in the Indy 500. So also had a 6th at Iowa as well, a 6th at Milwaukee, a 9th at Milwaukee with Rahal back in 24. I just feel like the results in terms of what he's doing are what people were saying about Alex Palou, say, a year or two ago. So I think that first oval win's coming. I also think that he is definitely competitive enough based on how this schedule's set up, 6, 6, and 6 in terms of road, street, and oval this year. I think he is truly a contender, and nothing's changed from what I saw at the end of last year through 4 races this year. I don't think anything has changed my opinion on that.
I think, if anything, the 1A, 1B conversation for last year, you say Pato O'Ward was 1A and Christian Lundgaard was 1B. Maybe, and granted, it's only through 4 races, but is Christian Lundgaard 1A and Pato O'Ward 1B?
Not willing to go there yet.
I don't think so either, but I mean, it's closer than it was last year when you looked at the championship standings. Pato finished 3rd. I think Christian Lundgaard was 6th. I think there was close to, 90 points in between them, something like that last year. So for Christian Lundgaard, yeah, anything can happen because we're only 4 races in, and we love to not look at point standings or at least psychoanalyze them. But at the same time, what Christian Lundgaard's been able to do, 3rd at St. Pete, 7th at Arlington, a runner-up at Barber, and look like the best car of the field. Very impressive. Meanwhile, Pato O'Ward really had a tough day, and you'd have to go to the uncensored version of the podcast to see what Pato O'Ward really had to say about his day. But it was tough. But this is still a guy that finished in the top 5 the first 3 races, but he still is seeking that first podium of the season. So it's not all roses for Pato O'Ward, but Christian Lundgaard just seems to have that it factor. Every single season he gets better, and he's well on his way to having his best season in IndyCar overall. And maybe by the end of the season, we're saying the new alpha at McLaren is Christian Lundgaard. We'll see. What about you? What about your number 2 coming out of Barber?
My number 2, let's talk about Graham Rahal. Great qualifying that seemingly came out of nowhere for him, and then to follow it up in the race. I mean, he's had success at Barber in the past. This was his first podium since the 2023 second IMS road course race, where he probably should have won that race and then Dixon pulled away. But I think for him, it's a confidence builder, and then also the gap between what he did compared to his teammates. His teammates were completely out to lunch on Sunday in the race. Mick Schumacher, 24th, Louis Foster, 25th. It was shocking to see not only that they struggle in qualifying, but that they were a complete non-factor in the race. And it's been a tough start for his 2 teammates. But for Graham Rahal, I think this is a great result. Builds confidence in the team. These are the kind of results they need to be contending for regularly. And I don't know, maybe we're seeing at least on his car, can't speak for the other 2, that they're going to be more consistency throughout 2026.
We always kind of look at Graham and RLL anytime they have a great finish as, okay, can they keep it going? And rarely do they. But Graham Rahal bringing it 3rd at Barber, his best finish at Barber since 2016. That was a season where he finished 5th in the championship. He hasn't finished that high since. And then you look at his previous finishes this season, 18th, 9th, and 18th. So, yeah, it was nice, but can we see the consistency out of Graham Rahal and going forward? I mean, this is a guy that hasn't had consecutive top 10s in a couple years, not since 2024 when you look at Iowa and Toronto. So it was a great run for Graham Rahal, and you mentioned it, considering his teammates and how much they struggled. It was kind of weird on how much he thrived, and they stunk, quite frankly. But can this continue going into Long Beach and beyond? That's always the big question anytime this team has a good finish is, can we see the consistency? And, you know, that question is still looms large post-Barber.
All right, what's your number 2?
So my number 2 is you look at the back end of the field. Tough weekend for the rookies. You look at Mick Schumacher, of course, one of those Rahal cars, finished 24th. Dennis Hauger also a lap down at 23rd, and Cal Collette, the last car on the lead lap, finishing in 21st. When you look at the first, let's say, month of the season with these 3 rookies, and you look at Mick Schumacher in particular, the struggles that he has had. He had the good qualifying pace. What Phoenix is what it was, which
yes.
is kind of weird. But you look at Cal Collette, you look at Dennis Hauger. If you're judging these 3 rookies based on their first 4 races, where are you scoring each of them? Because I think each of them have shown positive signs. I think Hauger coming out and finishing a top 10 at St. Pete caught people by surprise. I think Cal Collette has been consistently out of the picture, which is a compliment if you're a rookie, right? You don't want to be in the picture, so to speak, for all the wrong reasons. And then Mick Schumacher, the biggest resume coming in, but maybe the guy with the biggest learning curve out of all the 3 rookies. So it was a tough weekend for all 3 of them at Barber, but how would you score them through the first 4 weeks?
Schumacher, I'm just going to give an incomplete. I can't really – it's so early on, and he doesn't know any of these tracks, so I'm going to give him a lot of leeway. I think Collette's been solid. I'd go a C, and then Hauger I'd give a B. Great start, and then we've seen him kind of fade back, but we know the talent's there with Hauger. I think Collette is going to maybe come on stronger as the year goes on. And for Schumacher, I think he gets one decent result. It's going to build a ton of confidence for him, and then that could maybe change his season in a good way.
I really am rooting for Mick Schumacher, if for no other reason than I don't want it to be a one and done for Mick Schumacher. I really want to see him thrive in IndyCar, whatever that really looks like for him. But I'd like him to find a home in IndyCar. I feel like F1 is a beast, and if you get spit out the bottom and you don't have results, if you're at the wrong team at the wrong time, it can ruin your entire career, right? And I think that's what Mick was a victim of. I'm not saying he can be his dad, but at the same time, I think he's a very good race car driver, and I hope he doesn't get dejected and disinterested by being a backmarker. And right now, he's last in the standings. So I hope for his sake and for our sake, because I think the series is better if Mick Schumacher is in it, I hope he finds some success as the season goes on.
I would agree, and I'm hopeful that something can happen, and we actually have a good question from a listener talking about Mick Schumacher we'll get to in the mailbag, but I'm hopeful that he can turn it around, but like you said, I mean, really hope this is not a one-and-done situation, because I think that's the fear with this if it doesn't go well in year one.
Yeah, that's my hope, and hopefully better days are ahead for Mick Schumacher. What is your number 3, sir?
All right, let's talk some of the elder statesmen in the series, Scott Dixon and Will Power. So Dixon has struggled in qualifying all year, started 13th at Barber, did finish 7th, and look, he's driving his way through the field, which, I mean, of course he is. He's Scott Dixon. That's what he's going to do, but qualifying has been an issue all season long. Correct me if I'm wrong, he hasn't made a Fast 6 yet. Is that right?
I believe you are correct, sir.
So it's not happening for him in qualifying. And his last road course, so non-Indy 500, non-oval pole, I believe you have to go back to was it Road America in 22? Is that right?
I thought it was 2020 is the last road, or is that maybe non-oval?
Yeah, last non-oval pole for Dixon. Let's see if I can find this here. You're right. This goes a lot further back.
I want to say it was 2020. I think it's been 6 years.
It's been a long time. I know that. And, I mean, he doesn't get many poles as it is. That's not really his strong suit. But if qualifying goes away, looks like I see a pole in 2016 at Watkins Glen. There's got to be one more recent than that.
Check 2020, I want to say. Maybe Indy GP 2020. Trying to remember. Here's a stat for you, though, for Scott Dixon. And I know some certain listeners proclaim me a Scott Dixon hater, of which I am not. However, his first 4 finishes this season, Caleb, 23rd, 7th, 8th, and 7th. That is the first time in Scott Dixon's IndyCar racing history, going back to kart in 2002, that he has not had a top 5 in the first 4 races of the season.
Wow.
And I am not one that's eager to proclaim the end of careers in IndyCar. I'm not. Actually, excuse me, I'm going to take that back, because as I'm trying to scan on my telephone here as I sit in the car, because, spare no expense, I got to make sure I get these podcasts out to the masses, is it looks like it was 2005 when he was with, of course, Target Chip Ganassi.
And that was the Toyota bad years.
5.
That was
they
had a bad engine.
Toyota bad year. Yes. But it's been a minute since Scott Dixon has gone the first 4 races of the season without a top 5 finish. Now, he's been close, of course, a couple 7ths and an 8th, but he sits 10th in the standings. Again, we don't dabble into point standings, but I think it's correct in pointing this out, is that you found an interesting stat that was posted by somebody.
Yeah, I think I know who that someone was, to be clear. I think it was Russ Thompson, the former statistician for IndyCar on the TV broadcast side. So I'm going to read this off. It's a post.
Yeah, go ahead.
Against my better judgment, I still visit Track Forum from time to time. And here I'm kind of summarizing here, but he said the first part should be easy for this crowd. Who's the last driver to win a race after turning 45? The answer is Elio Castroneves when he won the 2021 Indy 500. Who was the last driver before Elio to win a race after they turned 45? Arie Luyendyk at Las Vegas on October 11th, 1998. He was something like 45 years and 21 days old. Dixon won Mid-Ohio last year and turned 45 just 16 days later. Power, as in Will Power, turned 45 race day this year at St. Pete. Can either of them defy the odds? Not many people have outrun Father Time. Since the start of the 1956 season, only 46 races have been won by a driver after turning 45. Uncle Bobby, Emerson Fittipaldi, and Mario Andretti account for 30 of the 46. That's a wild stat. And I'm kind of lumping Dixon in along with Will Power here. And Power's obviously had a bunch of poles in the last few years, whereas Dixon, I keep going back, and I think his last pole period was the 2022 Indy 500. That's the most recent one I can find. And for Road and Street, I actually do think it is that 2016 Watkins Glen one, because I keep searching back. I'm going to keep searching. But it's been so long since he won a pole outside of the Indy 500 or an oval. He did win a pole for Texas 2 back when they did doubleheaders there in 2021. But it goes to show you, when we talk about championship contenders, and we're not saying these guys can't win a race or two and be competitive top 5, definitely top 10 guys. I think they still both are definitely top 10 guys, but it's a whole other level when it comes to winning a championship. And between how the sport has changed, from talking about the legends within that post to now, obviously training a big factor, and Power and Dixon are physically fit. But look, as Russ mentioned, Father Time is undefeated.
It is, and look, we're talking about two of the best that have ever done it, right? And Scott Dixon and Will Power. But it has been going on 28 years since somebody 45 or older has won a race outside of the Indianapolis 500. And as you mentioned, that's Arie Luyendyk at Vegas in 1998. That's a long time. Now, there aren't a lot of guys that you lump into that in terms of dudes that have raced north of 45, particularly guys that are both capable of still winning races, of which we both agree that Will Power and Scott Dixon are. However, with each passing year, they become less and less relevant when it comes to the top drivers in this series. And I don't think the biggest Scott Dixon or the biggest Will Power fan can argue against that.
I mean, if
Scott
we were...
Dixon is now the clear 1B to Alex Palou. It's not even close.
Well, and here's the other thing. You look at Scott Dixon, as great of a career as he has had, and I think we pointed this out before, he's not even been the best driver on his team in now two separate eras. With Dario, when they were teammates 2009 to 2013, Dario had 3 titles, 2 Indy 500s. Scott Dixon, 1 title, no Indy 500s. And then now with Palou, 2001 or 2021 to present, Palou with 4 titles and 1 Indy 500 and 0 for Dixon. So this is the second time this has happened with Dixon, a teammate. Again, he is an all-time great. He has the race wins, the numbers, but it just goes to show you how competitive this series is.
And it's a combination of things. Scott Dixon, which I've said repeatedly, and I continue to back up, with the advanced age, your skills decline. Scott Dixon is not as good of a race car driver as he was at the peak of his skill set. Neither is Will Power. Will Power now also goes to a team that hasn't won a championship in 13 years. It's the last team since Penske or Ganassi to win a championship, but it's also been 13 years. And we've seen, even through the first 4 races, why they have gone 13 years without a championship in terms of the issues with not only in pit stops, but losing brakes with Will Power this past weekend, right? Will Power putting a wheel wrong a time or two already this year. And yes, Kyle Kirkwood is at the apex of the point standings right now. We'll see if that can continue. But when you look at both of those guys, Scott Dixon and Will Power, tremendous careers, right? We're not downgrading them at any point, but also it just seems like that magic number 45, it's been a long time since a driver outside of Elio has won a race, a traditional race, not the 500, of course. It's been almost 28 years since Arie Luyendyk. So it was another struggle for Will Power this weekend. And Scott Dixon, like, he's always that dude that, particularly in recent years, that just makes up a lot of positions on track. He does alternate strategies, right, to move up. But when's the last time we said Scott Dixon had the best car of the field? He had the best drive of the weekend. Like I said early in the show with Christian Lundgaard. When's the last time we said Scott Dixon was it this weekend? It's been a long time, Caleb, because Scott Dixon has had to get creative, and his team has had to get creative to make him competitive consistently at the top of the field. He's not that dude anymore, and that's okay. It's okay to admit that because he's still a dude, but he's not that dude.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're not saying Dixon and Power are washed. Like, that's not... No. We're just saying they're not true championship contenders at this stage of their careers, and I think it's okay to say that. Very different things.
And when you are so good, any decline is a significant decline, right? People love to, when Michael Jordan started regressing, right? When Tiger Woods starts regressing, when Tom Brady, I don't know if he ever did regress.
Well, he did that one year, and then he left and won a Super Bowl.
Right, yeah. It's like you love to say they're regressing because they were at the peak, right? They were the best of the best, and that's where both of those guys were, but they're no longer there. So I think it's just normal to say these guys aren't what they were, and I think it's okay to admit that, even if you're fans of them, because you look at the body of work through the first 4 races of the season for both of them, and it leaves a lot to be desired.
Can confirm Dixon's last road or street course pole was way back in 2016 at Watkins Glen. He also won a pole at Toronto that year as well. So that's how far back you have to go for him in terms of a non-oval pole position. So it's been a while. All right, what's your third and final takeaway from Barber?
We like to gang up on the third driver at Arrow McLaren in Nolan Siegel. And I'm going to take a break and gang up on or pick on the third driver at Chip Ganassi Racing. A 20th place finish for Kiffin Simpson. He is now 18th in the point standings. He has a 15th, a 10th, and 2 20th place finishes in the standings thus far. We expected more from Kiffin Simpson, and maybe it comes about and it's just a slow start. But at the same time, when we look at maximizing the potential in every single full-time seat at a power team and looking at Ganassi and saying they have the alpha in Alex Palou, they have a dude that can still matter in Scott Dixon, and Kiffin Simpson hasn't been that. He made quite the jump last year when we threw it out there and say, hey, Kiffin Simpson needs to have a great year, and he made considerable strides forward last year. But through the first 4 races of this season, Caleb, he has not been a factor, and it's around the same place as he finished in the points last year. He went from 21st to 17th last year, and you said, okay, maybe he can inch towards that top 12 this year. He is not there through the first 4 races, and I think this is a seat where we need to keep an eye on heading into potentially silly season if things don't turn around for one Kiffin Simpson, particularly with the beautiful livery that he is racing around in.
The best-looking car on the grid week in and week out. It's a shame that Kiff Dog has had a relatively tough start, top 10 at Phoenix being the only highlight. Again, I don't want to overreact too much, but this is a car, a team, I think, that definitely has the potential to be top 15 in the championship and could be more on the pointy end of that. 12, 13, 14, I think are realistic goals. And yes, IndyCar is so competitive, but I am surprised that Simpson has struggled as much as he has as well. In fact, Arlington, he caused the crash that was late, right? I mean, There's just, it's not been a good start. And for a guy who made a good jump, got his first podium at a couple top 5s as well last year with Ganassi. Maybe Long Beach is where the turnaround begins because that's where he had his first top 10 last season, and things we had a bit of a dry spell through May, but then kind of got back on track in June with a solid month there. So I think you look at Simpson, I think a lot of people would say he's the fittest guy on the grid, right? I mean, in terms of physical fitness, totally. I think this is a guy he's going to find a way. I feel confident. I understand he brings a massive check, but at the same time, that massive check has really helped Chip Ganassi Racing not only hold on to Alex Palou, it was a part of their expansion for a couple years before the charters came into play. He's going to figure it out. I'm feeling optimistic today about everything, I guess.
Which is amazing. I'm the one in Florida enjoying, 80-degree weather, and you've been in a quagmire of rain for the last week. But, hopeful for Kiffin Simpson. But I think it's a team, too, that you look at, and, in the years ahead, and as we talk about Scott Dixon and his decline, is Chip Ganassi wants to find the next Scott Dixon, whether it's a year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever, to be the Bravo to Alex Palou's alpha. And that's the pressure that Kiffin Simpson is on. Money can only take you so far. Eventually you need to start posting results, and I think everybody expects Kiffin Simpson to take that next step in year 3 this year. Now, not to say he can't do it, but he's already digging himself a hole that he's going to have to get out of. To your point, he also struggled out the gate last year, started turning it on at Detroit, and then really found his podium at Toronto. He had a 4th or a 5th at Nashville to end the season, something like that. And that really maybe gave hope to this team heading into year 3. But once again, he's out of the gate slow, and he's going to have to find himself. And you hope for him. Chip Ganassi's got enough other areas of revenue that he doesn't necessarily have to keep him in the seat for funding long term. He wants to find winners. Kiffin Simpson needs to start racing like a winner.
All right, that's our 3 things from Barber. Also of note of the weekend in lights, Nikita Johnson took his second win of the season after the leaders collided in race 1. And then finally, Alessandro Di Tullio won from pole in race 2, getting payback and finally getting that first win. So congrats to him. And Foyt getting a win in lights. So good for them. TV ratings didn't hit that magical 1 million number. However, it was close. 906,000 viewers, basically flat with last year, 914,000. Overall, though, I think you got to look at the overall, and that is the fact that, and Will Buxton posted this, 4 races in March, average viewership of 1.22 million. Great start to the season, up 30% from 2025. Best season start in almost 2 decades. So, again, still a great start. We knew it would be tough going against the Elite Eight, but all in all, this wasn't, the most compelling race, but still to be flirting with that million mark, I guess, considering the circumstances, is not the worst thing.
No, and, you take a week off, you come back, it's Elite Eight weekend, and I think the bigger challenge now is a couple weeks off going into Long Beach and seeing what that number is. You get back into May, you get the excitement of the Indianapolis 500. Hopefully that's another big number, and that can propel you into the summer. That's the hope. Like we've said, the biggest thing is that magic number being average over 1 million outside of the Indianapolis 500. If you can do that, I think it's a successful season.
The good news is NASCAR at Kansas actually leads into IndyCar at Long Beach on April 19th. So that's a big positive. Nice. So that will certainly help that figure as well. All right, if you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can always find us on social media, on Twitter/X. The handle is IndyCar Podcast. It's the same on Instagram as well. On Facebook, just search for New Track Record. You can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your questions, comments, rants, concerns, what have you there. patreon.com/New Track Record. Thanks to Rob, Reed, Gene, and others for their support. And as always, you can follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. So let's dive into the mailbag. And I teased that we had a question talking about Mick Schumacher. This from DeGuerra via Twitter. Is Mick Schumacher another Tom Blomqvist, a good endurance racer who can't get it together in IndyCar? Dead last in the championship. Will he stay in the seat if he messes up the 500 like Blomqvist did? I don't think that's a factor here. I think he'll be in the seat for the season.
No, I agree. Everything publicly and privately with Tom Blomqvist just seemed like a disaster, right? I mean, not just in the seat and performance-wise, but just all around. I don't know what my expectations were for Mick Schumacher entering the season. I don't think they were last in the standings, but I don't think also I didn't have him top 20 in the standings, and he's 20 points out of 19th in the standings. So for me, I guess I just hope that things get better for Mick. And he's had a couple positives. Phoenix was a positive, I felt, in terms of pace, in terms of qualifying, finishing the race. I mean, you got to remember, all these races are foreign for Mick Schumacher. And so for me, it's getting the races in, finishing the races. I think a detriment to him, quite frankly, is the team that he's at. No matter what we hear each offseason, until I see it, Ray-All Letterman Lanigan Racing is a backmarker, in my opinion, and he's with a backmarker team. So that doesn't help him, but hopefully things can turn around for him. Maybe the best thing for Mick Schumacher is getting on some ovals. I don't know. I mean, his best finish so far this season was on an oval. So let's get to May. Let's get to Indy. An F1-style flowing road course like the Indianapolis road course. Maybe he can make some headway there and get a good result at the 500. So I'm hopeful for Mick Schumacher. I don't expect him to finish the season where he is in the points. But can he be a factor in the Rookie of the Year conversation? He's going to have to turn it on here in the near future to be able to have a say in that.
We almost skipped over rate the race. How would you rate the race at Barber?
I don't know if it was because I was watching it while looking out in Pensacola Bay and the warmth and enjoyment of the water and the environment here in Florida, But I was very much bored in watching that race. I had it a 5.5.
I have it as a 6. I think the last 20 or so laps with all the battles, outside, of course, for the lead, I think were entertaining. But, yeah, it was a fine race. We had everything from, well, technically a 0, but a 1, because that's the lowest we give, to a 10. That's because that person was there in the replies here. But to get real specific, 6.25557. Essentially 6.26. This is the lowest rated race of the season. I don't think that's a surprise.
You know, when Alex Palou starts on pole, I don't know the exact numbers, but if he drives away from everybody at the beginning of a race, it almost feels inevitable what's going to happen. And this was another case of that. 79 of the 90 laps led by Alex Palou. Yeah, some good action, particularly late in the field, particularly battling for the podium, but it doesn't offset the fact that Alex Palou just dominated this race from start to finish.
For sure. We have Jeff Cerneski sending us some cross-promotion. It's the Shop Indy now has a new track record shirt, which they actually have an old one that I have as well, but just kind of funny. And then we got an email, so let me pull that up, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. This from Vince. Shortly after Will Power's crash at Barber, the broadcast contemplated they were going to rebuild the car that crashed. My question is, after a crash, what sorts of inspections are done? Are they just visual, x-ray, or something else? So, in terms of rebuilding the car, I mean, one, they usually have, whether it's Honda or Chevy, come in and sign off on the engine in terms of making sure it's good to go to stay in the car. And then, I mean, yes, teams visually inspect. They replace parts. They have to go through technical inspection again for whether it's for qualifying or the race or whatever. So I would say that would be the visual inspection. They're working on that X-ray type, which would be a laser inspection, which is hopefully coming by 2028. And I think as soon as next year. Is that right? Or is it 2028?
Yeah, I believe so.
So that's kind of the process.
Yeah.
Anything I'm missing there?
Well, I think it starts with the tub. If the tub is compromised, you immediately go to the backup, right? And then I think partially, too, is how ready is the backup car. And you look at some of the top teams, and they have ready backup cars, right? They're missing some key components, an engine, too. But if it's rare, every team is different. If a Ganassi looks at it and say, yeah, we're better off going, or if you look at for the sake of Scott McLaughlin, Penske is saying, yes, the backup car is our better option, particularly with how little time they had on Saturday to turn it around for qualifying. That makes sense. But if you're looking at maybe a Coyne, a Juncos, then maybe that decision to go to a backup, if even a backup is available, is a little bit of a different conversation. So I think every team is different. I think it's if the tub is compromised, it's immediately to the backup, right? But there's other different things, how much time you have, how much spare parts you have, what the condition of the backup car is. All those things kind of come in together. But you can imagine the top teams have ready backup cars prepared in the event, particularly if they have such a quick turnaround between practice 2 and qualifying.
That wraps up the mailbag. Thanks to Vince for sending the email. Thanks to others for their responses on socials. News and notes time, and we will start with Indy 500. And Marshall Pruitt reporting that Able Motorsports is filed their entry this week for the Indy 500 with Jacob Abel. And then after that, it kind of gets murky. So we expected there to be a fourth Andretti, and that would have likely have been Colton Herta. But now that seems to be in flux because F2 obviously not racing for a while, and they're looking at moving races to Miami and to Montreal as part of the F1 calendar and have a North American swing, which means Colton Herta would be busy for the month of May. And so it really kind of depends on that. Do they run that entry? Do they find someone else? Kind of depends on the F2 schedule there, which here's the thing, and I've seen people point this out. You don't just add a North American swing for these teams. Like, that's not necessarily in the budgets for their season. So I don't know how they're going to pull that off and teams just be cool with it, right? I mean, that's not how this works. They made budgets, and it didn't include North America.
I don't know if it's as simple as saying, hey, all your plans for going to the Middle East, you don't have to do that, and now you have to go to North America. I don't know if it's like, hey...
who's paying the freight bill?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, but, when you look back at the Abel announcement, if you had to put a number on it, how much money, if any, do you think the series is putting in for that Abel Motorsport entry? Do you think that's fully independent, or do you think they got some cash kick in from the series to make sure they were entered?
I think it's cash independent because I think the series, if they need to get to 33, will fund whatever team I think takes Catherine Legge with the Chevy entry, whether it's Prema, whether it's Foyt, which, interesting enough, Catherine Legge and her podcast with Larry Foyt this week, which is Throttle Therapy with Catherine Legge. She has a conversation with Larry Foyt. So keep that in mind in terms of possibilities for Catherine Legge to end up.
Duly noted.
So that's kind of where I'm at with all this. Again, Pruitt says the same thing on Racer.com. Legge could go to Prema. The fallback is going to AJ Foyt Racing as well. With Andretti's fourth car, then they could work with Prema or Foyt. Without it, they'd work with Prema or Foyt for that 33rd. Otherwise, we could have 34. It's all goes back to last week where it's a closed club, and let's not discount 95 bump day for factoring this in for Penske, where he wants to make sure everyone has a spot at the table for the Indy 500. And I think that has a big factor with how this closed-off club has become in terms of entries, and I understand it's the OEMs said it, but they're all working together on this. 34 is like their perfect number to them, whereas to us, we want to see 36 to 40. And maybe next year we see more because it's the last year of this current engine regs and chassis regs. I doubt it, but we can hope.
Maybe, but I don't see it. Yeah, I mean, the number is still 33 right now. Anything above 33 is great. Unfortunately, that's where we're at. We're not talking 35, 36, blah, blah, blah. We're talking, could we get to 34? Right now, it just doesn't look promising.
No, it does not. Racer.com mailbag recap. Cusick is in Cusick Morgan Motorsports committing their funds to Lights, not interested in a 500 ride. Pruitt asked a team owner after the Lights race which drivers looked the part of future IndyCar drivers. All of them were Lights rookies. That would be the case, which I thought it was fascinating that Fox put up Miles Rose, a possible Indy 500 driver, which I don't think that is going to happen this year, maybe next year. Also, push for a Mexico race is cool, which we kind of talked about that via motorsport.com article the other week as well. So that's a quick recap on the mailbag. Another podcast note, Marco Andretti's on the latest edition of Racers Unchained with Paul Tracy. So that I'm sure is a really interesting listen. Got to check that out. Let's see. Jaron Demendal, who covers IndyCar from the Netherlands. This is translated, but he said, amid all the April Fool's fuss, it's been noticeably busy in the drafty parking garage these past few days. Most relevant for us Dutch folks, April could turn out to be an intriguing month for Juncos Hollinger Racing for several reasons. Watch this space. So I don't know. I love a good rumor, though. So we'll keep that in mind.
That was translated from Dutch?
Yes.
So, Juncos, Dutch, Max Verstappen.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew it. Not happening. Not happening.
First reported on New Track Record Podcast.
Simply not happening. Elsewhere among drivers, ECR, we can't call it Ed Carpenter Racing, it's just ECR now. I don't know if you were aware. But they have...
Yeah, which is weird, but ECR has to stand for something, but apparently it's not. It can't stand for anything anymore.
Hunter McElroy is now the team's test and reserve driver. So it is interesting that IndyCar is shifting to that. McElroy's obviously had, I think, a couple of IndyCar starts, but would love to see him get more opportunities, but this is at least a chance to get a foot in the door with a team for him. Let's see what else we have. Indy 500 rentals now live for Racing Electronics. Again, they'll be back in the Indy 500, so if you want to rent a scanner You can check it out on their site. Everything already ready to reserve. Which, have you ever rented or had a scanner for a race? It's awesome.
I did 1 year at Michigan way back when, and it was great.
I did it, I think, once or twice at Texas, and then I've done it at the Indy 500 a couple times. Now I just bring like my headset radio that I use to mow with, so I just turn on, listen to the radio broadcast, which works well. It's I don't know, like 10 seconds behind or something. It's not too bad. It helps give you a lot of context of what's going on. But it was so cool. One of the years at Texas, it was my friend's dad's friend who was like a season ticket holder at TMS back when that was a thing, a decade ago. Didn't just have scanner, but he had the scanner with the headset microphone where you could chat back and forth to like your scanner buddy, like commenting on the race and listening to stuff in real time, which is just incredible. It's incredible. Phenomenal. Obviously very expensive as well, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm sure.
A couple more things. Let's see. Doug Bowles talking with Racer.com, saying seeing the early season schedule experiments pay off, which obviously, yes, they finally have fixed the early season portion of the schedule. I think that's been key. Now it's just finding maybe one more race to slot in before May so you don't have this long gap between Barber and Long Beach and then the IMS road course race.
It'd be very nice. And I know the Easter the date's always up for grabs, so you never know where that's going to fall, but I'd like some advanced planning for the coming years to figure out if we can plug another race, maybe another oval, folks, maybe before Indy. Maybe.
That would be cool. All right. Anything that we missed before we get to tweets of the week?
I don't think so. It was different for me this year. Usually this week falls on a non-race week, or at least the weekend. So I had to play catch-up, but was able to watch everything throughout the first couple days of the week. Congratulations, AJ Foyt Racing, getting that first win, the first since 2002, I want to say, in Indy Lights. So,
and the winning driver, was it Ed Carpenter?
No, because that was 2003 with Ed Carpenter was the last, yes, he was the last pole sitter. 2002, the winner was AJ Foyt the fourth.
Ah, yes. The 2002 Infiniti Pro Series. Ed Carpenter did participate. Marty Roth, Ari Leindyke Jr., Jason Priestley, actor, former race car driver. Who else we got? We got AJ Foyt the fourth, as you mentioned. And really, I don't recognize really any of the other names. Corey Witherill, I recognize that name as well. But that's it.
Corey Witherill went into NASCAR, didn't he?
I think so.
I do believe. Yeah, I do think so. So, yeah, a long time coming for AJ Foyt Racing, and they announced this week that they're partnering up with a team in the junior formulas. So that is cool to see for AJ Foyt Racing, having success already. Alessandro Del Tullio should have won a couple races already, including that race one at Barber, and was taken out. But so momentum for Foyt in the lower formulas. We'll see if that can translate into some improvement, continued improvement in the IndyCar series. So that was cool to see.
All right, tweets of the week time. And first, from Motorsports, you asked for more of this content. What are the last three IndyCar championships versus Thomas the Tank Engine? Who would win? I thought that was great because, one, we both have toddlers at home. We have some Thomas books. Our son is getting a Thomas Tony for Easter in his Easter basket.
Is Tony the crane?
No. Tony, like the Tony box that like plays like the little figurines. Oh. It's kind of like a modern record player.
Gotcha.
So he's getting Thomas, but I mean Thomas is on rails, so right, that's pretty hard to beat when your train is on rails, right? That's hard to beat.
Although the amount of crashes and derailments they have on the island of Sodor is very much a concern. Yeah,
and they don't have safer barriers.
Just insane. Yes. For those that know. For the people that don't, are like listening to this going, what are they talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Next tweets from David Malukas. Just realized I had 100 seconds of push to pass with 2 laps to go. And then he had to follow that up saying it was a joke. He was joking, but I thought it was pretty funny that he acknowledged it. Did you see the Kit Kat heist?
Yes. Amazing.
Formal press release over the weekend, this from Adam Stern. 12 tons of its new Formula One car-shaped Kit Kat chocolates go missing in apparent heist in Europe. What is with all the heists in Europe these days? We had a heist at the Louvre.
I don't know, but
a heist of Kit Kats. I mean, what is going on?
Now, there were specialty F1 Kit Kats. Like, what are you going to do with those? I mean, I guess you can eat them, but 12 tons of Kit Kat?
That's a lot of Kit Kat.
First off, how are you keeping them from not melting?
I don't know. It's a great question.
Yeah.
Final tweet of the week.
Hopefully they turn up.
Yes. Final tweet of the week. Pretty simple. Jenna Fryer. Alex Palou won an IndyCar race today, and the sun came up.
Some days it just feels like, everything's inevitable, right?
Yes.
Who's going to win the championship, And I feel like that's a lot of the feeling in the paddock sometimes, too, is, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? And
exactly.
Another dominant performance by Alex Palou.
All right, we'll get back to our Random Splitter Driver of the Week next week when you return. But
yes,
that does it for us. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, the limited time you have left. And we'll be back next week to talk the latest and greatest in the world of IndyCar here on New Track Record Podcast.